Hello and welcome. You're watching India Global. I'm Gauri Dwivedi. This is a show that gets you all the latest news that's happening around the world and that matters to the global Indian. But first up, as always, we start with headlines. US President Donald Trump claims Iran-Israel truce is now in effect. Netanyahu, Israeli Prime Minister, says Israel has agreed to Trump's truce proposal. United States all set to screen social media accounts of visa applicants. Applicants will be required to adjust their social media privacy settings if they want a visa from the US. Reform UK proposes selling UK residency for £250,000. Britannia card is what it's called. It will offer tax breaks on overseas assets. And Shubhanshu Shukla's Axiom 4 mission targets 25th June launch. NASA says Axiom 4 mission launch likely to take place tomorrow. All right, viewers, the big story that we are tracking on India continues to be, well, what's happening in the Middle East. US President Donald Trump has said that there is now a truce in place. Even as Prime Minister of Israel has said that he's agreed to the Trump's peace proposal, even though there is still fluidity that remains simply because the situation on ground is so volatile. Netanyahu says that all objectives of Operation Lion against Iran have been achieved. So does peace really have an option right now? Is it likely to get that particular option is the big question. Even as viewers, there's been a barrage of missiles that's been launched by Iran that's been targeting several cities of Israel, and the death toll has risen, and that has been a cause of great concern for Israel and also for America, given that this truce, this peace proposal is yet to really be tested completely. Now, Israel has reopened its airspace for emergency flights, and India has evacuated fresh batch of 292 nationals from Iran. And how this thing is likely to pan out going forward is going to be extremely interesting. Let's quickly now tell you, viewers, what really has happened in the last 12 odd days. And let's tell you the 12-day war broken down in terms of the timeline. Let's put that out for you. First and foremost, it started with 13th of June when that surprise attack was actually launched by Israel. That was the first start of this entire attack. It came after Israel felt that Iran is not acting as far as its nuclear program is concerned. 13th of June is when the nuclear sites of Iran were attacked by Israel, the first set of strikes that happened. Let's move ahead. Let's talk about what happened on the 18th of June when Iran fired missiles at Israel. This is when it got the escalation really started coming into play, that Iran had started firing back at Israel. Several of Israeli cities were under attack due to a barrage of Iranian missiles that were being targeted at several residential areas. That's what Israel had said, that many residential areas were being targeted. But then it escalated between 18th and 20th of June when fighting continued to escalate from the Iranian and Israeli side. Strikes and counter strikes were being exchanged, and more residential areas were being hit, even as the IDF said that it was only targeting IRGC command centers. IRGC is the elite unit of Iranian military. On 21st June, this is the inflection point, viewers, when 3 nuclear sites in Iran were attacked by the US. This was done through B-2 stealth bombers. This was done through Tomahawk cruise missiles, and 3 of the main Iranian nuclear sites were attacked. This was Fordo, Isfahan and Natanz, where it was assumed and it was said that the nuclear facility was enriching uranium, which was already at 60% and was set to grow up to as high as 90%. Then on the 23rd is when the Iranian retaliatory attack came against US. They were continuing to strike the Israeli cities, but this is when they attacked the US airbase in Qatar. It was supposed to be in retaliation to its 3 nuclear sites being attacked, but this was largely symbolic in nature, viewers, simply because The attack had already been forewarned. Qatar was forewarned, which went ahead and informed America much in advance, which was able to pull out most of its strategic assets from one of its most important core bases in Qatar. It's one of the forward bases of US Central Command. Qatar has been hosting that since 1996. It has also pumped billions of dollars there. So this is a very large forward base of the US in Middle East, which was attacked. But because of the forewarning, it was largely symbolic, which is why quickly the last thing that came in, which is that Trump announced ceasefire. Hours after that attack is when the ceasefire really came into play. It was announced suddenly by Donald Trump. Many asked, was this premature? Was this premeditated? Well, questions that remain unanswered. But that's the broad timeline of the 12-day war, viewers, in terms of what really happened, the sequence of events that had brought the world to a possible brink of a potential escalation that could engulf not just the Middle East, but the wider area, maybe even the entire world. And as we talk about this, I want to now play out this ground report that's been filed by my colleague Ankit Tyagi, who's on ground, who is in Israel, covering this war, covering every detail of it. And he's talking about how air sirens are still being heard across Israel, even as we keep talking about this ceasefire here. Listen into that ground report.
There were some interceptor fragments which in fact fell at a few places which have been reported by the local media. The third one came just about 10 minutes before the fourth one, just about 10 minutes. All right, as I speak you can hear the air raid sirens going in, so I will have to make my way towards a shelter this is the fourth time that these air raid sirens have gone in, and we will try and make our way out and see if we can find us a safe place. This is the fourth time the air raid sirens have gone out here in Tel Aviv and Israel. Thank you so much. So fourth alert here, and you heard the sirens going behind me while we were trying to speak. I am in a place where I could. All right, this is the announcement being made. Listen into. So this announcement basically saying make your way to the safe area, and at this moment I can tell you that this is the fourth air raid siren that went off when you heard the massive air raid sirens that just began to in fact blare here in Tel Aviv as well. I have lost the connection to the studio. I'm hoping that I can get connected again because the signal here in the safe room are extremely bad. Okay, again we can hear some loud thuds. It seems that interceptors are on the job. There are some missiles which have been lobbed towards Tel Aviv, at this moment I can only tell you that this is from the time I've come in, it's the third day now, and I have never seen in the last 3 days, 12th day of the war, how continuously barrage after barrage of missiles is coming in from Iran. There were alerts, yesterday also when the alerts came in, one was at 3 a.m. in the morning, the other one then was at 10:30 a.m. In the morning, but there was some gap. Right now, in just a matter of last 1 hour, there have been 4 alerts, and once again, this is the third time in Tel Aviv that I can hear massive thuds which are taking place right outside. It seems that the interceptors at this moment are working, but very, very difficult situation as we speak.
All right. While the truce tango continues, there are questions that are being asked about how does this add up with a symbolic Iranian strike on Qatari base, followed by a ceasefire announcement that happened almost in a matter of hours. Let's put out those big questions that we'll get our experts to answer for us, and questions that are being now asked around the world. First and foremost, now as the ceasefire now comes into effect, it's expected to till about 7 p.m. Israeli time is when it is being given that time period with window by Israel. Will this now mean that talks will once again start? Will diplomacy be given a shot? That's the first key question that we are asking. Next, will this ceasefire actually hold? Will peace hold in this region? Right now, Israel has said that they're going to see till 7 p.m. today. And remember, even during the ceasefire window that Iran was given that 12 hours, there were these massive strikes that came in from the Iranian side. Next, what really happens to the Iranian nuclear program? The premise of these strikes was the Iranian nuclear program. What happens to that, and what is the status there? And last and equally important, which is that is Trump really a peacemaker, or is he a peace prize chaser? Remember, there's been a lot of anticipation about how Donald Trump deserves Nobel Prizes because he's going around shutting and closing wars, and he's bringing about peace. And we told you about the timeline here. Just hours after that symbolic attack on the American airbase in Qatar was this announcement of a ceasefire. Let's connect the dots. Let's kind of get our guest to join us for more on this. James Dorsy, who's a journalist and a Middle East expert, joins us on the broadcast, along with Professor Jangid, who is also an adjunct faculty at the Ben Gurion University in Israel, and also here at the OP Jindal University. All right, James Dorsy, let me start with you. How do you see things right now in terms of the situation on ground? There is fluidity, but the questions that we are asking, let's take them one by one. Do you see the fire actually holding out?
I think this is a very, very fragile halt to the hostilities. I think one's got to be careful to call it a ceasefire. Let's keep in mind that Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu call it a ceasefire. The Iranians don't. As far as the Iranians are concerned, they are holding to the position that they had from the beginning of this round of hostilities, which was, we will stop when the Israelis stop. If the Israelis stop and call it a ceasefire, that's fine with them. But as far as they're concerned, there's no ceasefire as such. There's a halt to the hostilities. Second of all, we don't know if there are any conditions or terms attributed to the ceasefire. Whether it will hold will very much depend on a number of factors. First of all, whether or not you get a return to the negotiations. Return to the negotiations is going to be difficult because the Iranians are not going to return to the negotiations on Trump's terms, which are basically a surrender. Moreover, it depends on what the Iranians do. I think one can
what Iranians will do? I'll tell you what, Mr. Dorsey, you're speaking about what Iranians will do. There is breaking news coming in, and let's put that out right now for our viewers. So, that there is breaking news coming in, that there are more missile strikes that are taking place. That's what Iranians are doing. We were talking about whether or not this fragile peace framework may actually hold. And you mentioned how it's being called a ceasefire only on one side, which is the Israeli side, and not on the Iranian side. But update coming in is that the IDF says that sirens has been sounded in northern Israel, and missiles have been fired from Iran. So, Mr. Dorsey, what are we really talking about here? What framework of peace are we really even now hoping to stand out?
I obviously haven't seen the last news.
No, sir, this just came in. This is coming in right now during the broadcast.
I have no doubt. I have no doubt about its accuracy, and I think you've got your answer. If the Iranians are firing after there was an agreement or an understanding to halt the firing, then obviously they don't see a halt to these hostilities. We don't know whether that was unprovoked, provoked. I have no idea, so it's very hard to judge. But it is clearly a demonstration of just how fragile whatever agreement there may or may not be, and the fact that it already is being violated.
Professor Kinraj, come in there. We're talking about, well, the first question we were asking was whether this peace, this fragile peace framework is actually going to stand or not. Within just hours, we seem to be getting not very encouraging response.
Namaskar. It is actually holding well, I must say. I'm in Tel Aviv. As Ankit, your colleague, was showing, those were the sirens that happened here from 4:30 in the morning till about 7 o'clock. In fact, I was sleeping in a shelter room, which looks like a bedroom. It's not like a bunker or a tunnel. And after 7, there has been a complete halt of sirens. What you just read out seems to be the news also in the Israeli media at the moment, that there was a one missile launched in the north. But the statement of the Iranian leaders, as well as the statement of the David Netanyahu in Tel Aviv, have agreed to the peace, agreement. I mean, ceasefire agreement. I personally think that this is something that Iran needed as much as America needed. I'll tell you, a day before yesterday, Israeli leaders told Iranians that we will wrap up our operation in few days. And I think it was Trump's ultimatum to Netanyahu to stop it. So I think Trump exercised some amount of leverage over Israel, and Iran really needed a way out. Let's understand this. A few years back, when Soleimani was assassinated, Iranians also carried the ballistic missiles on the American camps with ample amount of information given beforehand, and this is exactly what they did in Qatar. So it gives them a public face, it gives a respectful exit for the regime in Iran, and I think this is what precisely they did yesterday. That they informed Qatar, and Americans were informed. In fact, Israelis were informed.
Indeed, the off-ramp that was offered to the Iranian regime to be able to come out of the present conflict without actually succumbing to the domestic political constituencies there as well. The other question that I want to ask both of you, which is, well, before I come to Donald Trump and his aspiration here, whether it is about peace or whether it's about price, we're going to come to that in a bit. I want to then talk about the nuclear program, the premise of the entire conflict reaching what it was. The whole 12-day war was because the nuclear program continues unabated. James Dorsy, your thoughts on, do you see that now being brought back on the negotiating table?
Again, as I stated earlier, the Iranians want negotiations. The Americans want negotiations. The problem is that in the last 5 rounds, you've had very different concepts of what constitutes a negotiation. If that difference in concept of negotiations, with other words, Trump's tone and his basic attitude which is, I'm telling you what you're going to do, you're going to do it, and if you don't do it, you now know what's going to happen. That's not going to work. I think the further issue here is that you are going to, clearly the Israelis and the Americans have severely damaged the Iranian nuclear program. We don't know how damaged it is. We also don't know how damaged the Iranian ballistic missile arsenal is. But you can bet on it that the Iranians will resume their nuclear program. They will rebuild it, and they will continue to manufacture ballistic missiles.
Okay.
So unless you have a negotiation that really is aimed at coming to a equitable solution,
okay,
you're going to see this halt to hostilities break down.
Okay, so we haven't heard the last of this, but have you heard the last of Trump's prize aspirations? Professor Kinraj, let me ask you that. Donald Trump and his aspiration for Nobel Peace Prize, many believe that seems to be the one that's driving how he wanted a ceasefire just hours after that attack.
I think his temptation will be really fulfilled if he recognizes the Palestinian state and now calls Israel to end the war in Gaza immediately, which he is capable of doing. The point is, will he really pull the Israel into that change of policy? As far as the nuclear program is concerned, it's a wicked problem in international relations. What Iran is doing is what India did. India went nuclear under American sanctions.
Right.
In fact, if you look at the Indian vocabulary against the NPT, it's exactly the language that Iranians have been using, calling it a nuclear apartheid system. The Western world was extremely unfair and remains unfair with their privileges of having the weapons and forbidding the others.
Right.
Personally, think what is working for Trump for this ceasefire is the
Yes.
fact that Trump went to this war having the lowest public support for this Iran war.
Indeed.
There was a survey, and less than 20% Americans supported Trump involving in Iranian issue.
Yes.
In fact, some of his billionaire friends and tech friends who are part of the, Make America Great Again,
Yes.
they advised him, don't do it. Now, he did the attacks because this was something that was needed. And I do think that Iranian nuclear program was reaching an aggressive messaging as well as explicit threats to the Israeli state. Now that the nuclear program is done, let's
Yes.
think of it. He's not interested in a regime change, even when he said it loosely
Yes.
twice. And Israelis realized it. In fact, there was an interesting report 2 days back in Israel, by the way. IDF released a report for the Israeli Security Cabinet saying that the 10 days of the war has not shaken the regime domestically. What
Right.
Israel anticipated, that there would be a huge public uprising against
Absolutely.
the regime. That didn't happen. So I think Israelis as well as Americans realized they cannot go for a regime change.
They cannot
The
go for a
world will
regime
turn
change.
against them.
Absolutely. All
Trump
right.
needs to get back to his Make America Great Again project,
All
and
right.
that he do if Middle East goes for a war. But as far as the Nobel Prize is concerned,
No
he
one
will for
knows.
sure get it if he gets the Palestinian issue back on the track.
All right, I'm going to leave it there, gentlemen. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining me on this edition of India Global. Well, viewers, the bottom line, as far as this issue is concerned, is that now that the Israel-Iran conflict seems to hopefully be nearing its end, questions do remain as far as the Truce Pact is concerned. How was it ratified? US has had pushed for a ceasefire owing to Trump's campaign promise of not entering a conflict. He needs to keep his MAGA constituency happy. Twice he's campaigned for not entering a Middle East war. He could not have possibly entered one himself, which is why a ceasefire was important. Second was his aspiration for a Nobel Peace Prize. He was nominated by the Pakistanis, but the Pakistanis themselves now are debating whether Trump was worth it or not. So he needed someone else to nominate him for, and that was this war. It had to come to an end, and which is why this could be another reason why Donald Trump announced a ceasefire so early. Is that going to be the situation on ground? Will the peace actually hold out, or will conditions once again lead to some sort of a contest or a conflict from here on? No one knows. On that note, viewers, if we slip into a quick break, we come back with more news on the other side. Stay with us.